Welcome to the next section of the Natural Environment Teaching module. How do you implement NET? If done well, natural environment teaching seems like it's all fun and games. Although sessions should be as fun and natural as possible, the steps to perform this procedure are actually highly structured. If the teaching procedure isn't performed as it is written, the session could quickly become instructor-led. The following video will give you an overview of a performance monitoring tool, which lists the steps to perform a natural environment teaching procedure.
I'll be going over the performance monitoring tool for conducting a natural environment training procedure. So, from here on out, I'll be referring to the performance monitoring tool as PMT and natural environment training as NET. So here's an overview of the PMT. I will break down the PMT so that it's understandable, and we'll show what it looks like through some video clips. So let's get to it. Before we get into the breakdown of the PMT, I want to inform you of the target behavior, or the skill being taught in the videos you're about to see. The target behavior for a case will be specified by a supervisor, but for the purpose of this video, the target behavior is a demand, or a request for something that the client needs or wants. As a side note, not all clients will be demanding the same way. Some may use one word, while some may be using a full sentence. There may even be others that are not verbal and requires using sign language. The forms of demand may vary across clients. So, with that in mind, just for the purpose of the video, we will say that a correct response would be any instance in which the client says, "I want" either an item or activity. When collecting data on the PMT, if the instructor performed the step correctly, we will mark a plus. If the instructor did not perform the step correctly, we will mark a minus. Now take a look at the top of the PMT that looks a little just like this. So when filling out this section, you want to put in your name over here, your instructor's name, the client's initials, the date of the session, the starting time of the session, as well as the target skills that are being taught, and the preferred stimuli. Step 1. Prepare the data sheet by listing the target skill or preferred stimuli. Here is an example of the data sheet that the instructor will be using to collect data. On this data sheet, we want to make sure that the instructor filled out the name, client's initials, the date and start time of the NET program, the skills that will be taught, and any items that may be preferred. These preferred items were determined by results of a preference assessment. Step 2. Arrange the environment by placing items where they are visible, but out of reach, or inaccessible to the client. Watch the following clip to see how the instructor places the item in locations where they are visible, but may be out of reach from the client. By doing this, the instructor is trying to set up opportunities to teach the client that if he requests for items appropriately, he can gain access to what he wanted. Step 3. Remain within 3 feet of client. It may be hard to see what 3 feet looks like, but just think of an arm's length from the client as 3 feet. Notice how the instructor walked in after the client and was still within 3 feet of the client after they sat down. It's important to remain within arm's length of the client so that it's easier to use the items that they approach as teaching opportunities. Step 4. Wait it up to 10 seconds for client to approach the item or engage in an activity. Remember that with NET, the teaching procedure is led by the child, not the instructor. So, if the instructor leads the client to an activity or gets an item and tries to give it to the client, mark a 0. If the instructor waited up to 10 seconds for the client to independently approach an item or engage in an activity, then we will say that is correct. Step 5 is broken down into 2 sections. The first part of Step 5 is if there is no approach or engagement from the client after waiting 10 seconds, then the instructor should create client motivation. This can be done by either playing with an item that the client might like, sort of like this. He's doing it! He's doing it! Or the instructor can be playing in a repetitive play situation, like this. Oink, 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 oink. Wow, it's a flying pig. Oh, he's falling. Mr. Oinkers, nice try. Let's try it again, Mr. Oinkers. Oh. Or, as a third option, the instructor could be playing an activity that the child might enjoy, like this. Oh no. However, if the client still does not approach an item or start to engage in an activity, then we should move on to the second part of step 5, where the instructor should either move a toy closer to the client or start playing with another toy that they may like. Let's watch the following clip and watch how the instructor attempts to create motivation and switch up items to play with when the client continues to not approach an item or engage in an activity. Oink, 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 oink. Wow, it's a flying pig. Oh, he's falling. Oh, Mr. Oinkers, nice try. Let's try it again, Mr. Oinkers. Oh, Mr. Oinkers couldn't do it. He's gonna go back. He's gonna rest a little bit. But then this monkey came out. I think the monkey can fly. Let's see. He's doing it. In the previous scenario, the instructor was successful in contriving motivation from the client. Step 6. If the client does reach for an item or begin to start an activity, then the instructor should make the item inaccessible or pause the activity. You, as the instructor, should make the item inaccessible by blocking the client from reaching or grabbing the item before the client does, and then keep it out of reach. Here's an example of what it looks like when keeping the item out of reach. By doing this, you are using the client's motivation to create an opportunity to teach them an appropriate method of telling you what they want. Here's a side note. As the instructor, when making the item harder for the client to get, be sure to leave the item in the client's eyesight. When the item is being fully covered, it implies that the item is no longer available for them to play with. Now, going back to what we're talking about. After making an item inaccessible or pausing the activity, the instructor should make eye contact with the client and wait up to 5 seconds for a response. The instructor should refrain from providing instructions or prompts at this time. Let's take a look at an example of what this looks like. He's doing it! After the completion of step 6, take a look at the small section. In this section, you will write the name of the item that the client approached or the activity that the client began to start. Having this information comes in handy when reviewing the data after the session, either to provide feedback to the instructor on the performance or to calculate reliability between observers. And now, the following 2 steps will depend on the response the clients make. That is, if the client responds correctly, we would go on to step 7 and move on to the next trial. However, if the client responds incorrectly, we will leave step 7 blank and skip over to step 8. Now, with that information, let's continue. Step 7. If the client provides the correct response, then provide the item along with a praise. Now, before we continue, I want to remind you of the correct response for this video. The correct response in this video is for the client to say, I want either the item or an activity. If the client gives the correct response, give the item along with a praise. For delivering praise, it can be something simple like, good job. The second part of step 7 is to see if the instructor took data. Now, let's watch the following clip to see how the steps should be performed.
I want car.
Good job saying I want car. Here. The first part of this step is to withhold the item or activity. When withholding, keep the item out of the client's reach or refrain from allowing the activity to continue. In this following video clip, notice how the client just reaches out to grab the monkey, but that is an incorrect response. So, the instructor keeps the monkey out of reach. The second part of step 8 is to see if the instructor appropriately prompts the client to respond correctly. Let's say for this example, the correct response is, I want monkey. With prompting, first we want to start off by saying only the beginning of the correct response, which is I wa. and wait 5 seconds for the client to say the correct response. If, however, the instructor provides the first prompt and the client still doesn't respond correctly, then the instructor should provide the next level of prompt by saying the entire correct response, which is, I want monkey. Now going a little bit more down on step 8 is based off the client response after the instructor provides the prompt. If the client responds correctly after the instructor provided one or more prompts, the instructor should then give the item or allow the activity that is being mandated for, along with providing praise. And for the last part of step 8 is to see whether the instructor took data within 5 seconds of providing the item. If the client does not have a response even after all the prompts being delivered, wait 10 seconds for a response. If, however, there is still no response, then continue on with the next trial. Now, with all the information of step 8, let's see what this all looks like. Let's see. He's doing it! He's doing it! He's doing it! I want monkey.
I want monkey.
Good job saying I want monkey. You can have it. And finally, step 9. This step is only looked at if there was an occurrence of problem behavior during an NET procedure. If the client engages in any problem behavior specified in the behavior intervention plan, then block the client from gaining access to the item and keep them out of the client's reach. Once the problem behavior stops, wait for 30 seconds. Make sure that the 30 seconds there was no occurrence of the problem behavior happening. Then once the 30 seconds are up, then begin the next trial with any item other than the one that was used during the trial with the problem behavior. Just for the sake of this video, we'll be looking at throwing as the target problem behavior. Throwing will be defined as any instance the client projects an item from his hand. In the following video, I want you to notice how the instructor took the toy away from the client and did not provide access to the item, as well as waited for 30 seconds after the end of the problem behavior before beginning the next trial. Try again, so he's gonna flap. He's trying. Oh no, he can't do it. But the monkey did it. I want pig.
Pig. Pig. Pig. I want car.
Good job saying I want car here. Now that you have looked and learned what the steps involved in natural environment teaching looks like, let's watch the next video and use the PMT to practice taking data on the performance of the instructor.